my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm going to cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt-Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place for women to come together to share their childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from women all over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by Kindred Bravely. From adorable maternity wear to comfortable nursing bras, this mom-owned company has you covered. See all of their comfy clothing at kindredbravely.com. I especially love their Simply Sublime nursing tank. I talk about it all the time, and all of their high-waisted leggings are amazing for pregnancy and postpartum this time of year. I'm going to be sharing a little bit more at the end of this podcast about some of my new favorites from Kindred Bravely, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And you can use the coupon code BIRTHHOUR for 20% off your purchase at kindredbravely.com. Today's guest is Megan. Megan's going to be sharing about her experience finding out that her son had Down syndrome during pregnancy, what that was like, and then her birth and postpartum as well. Hi, Megan. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bryn. Happy to be here.
Can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Sure. My name is Megan, and I live in Baltimore City, Maryland, with my husband, Matt, and our 2-year-old son, Robert, who we call Bert.
All right, so we're going to hear Bert's story today. So let's start with finding out you were pregnant and how your pregnancy went.
Sure. So my husband and I decided before we got married that we wanted to wait a year after the wedding to start trying. So that's what we did. And it took about 4 months. And yeah, it was pretty easy. We found out we were pregnant on December 9th, and we were super excited. We went to Michigan, which is where I'm from, when I was about 6 weeks along. And so I was excited to tell my mom and dad and family in person. And while I was there, I got really sick and couldn't keep my fever down and ended up going to urgent care. And that just started my spiral, I think, my first trimester spiral, where I was very anxious. And I came home and I started spotting and then lightly bleeding. And I called my midwife, and she basically told me that everything was probably fine and didn't want to see me or anything yet. So I was just kind of stuck at home waiting. And so I elected to have an elective sonogram at 8 weeks so that I could see, his heartbeat. That's all I was hoping for. And I got there and it was really quick. And as soon as she, put the wand on my stomach, I saw his heartbeat and I immediately relaxed, which was great. So I was able to relax for, about 4 more weeks. During this time in my pregnancy, my husband had to go to Florida for a special ed conference. He's a special educator here in Baltimore City. And so he was out of town during my first trimester screen. And so my mom actually came out to Baltimore so that she could go with me. She really wanted to be able to see the baby. We had gone to our confirmation of pregnancy appointment, but that was really quick. I mean, we really just went in, they confirmed I was pregnant. They asked if we wanted genetic testing and we said no. And then we went home. So I hadn't really had a real midwife appointment yet, but they had ordered, the first trimester screen. So I went and had that done with my mom, which is when they ended up finding soft markers for possibly Down syndrome or other chromosomal abnormalities. And that whole experience was really awkward and long and not what I would have hoped for with my husband being out of town. So my mom was in there. It was a sonographer and a student, and the sonographer got all the pictures that she wanted. And I noticed she was being kind of cold and not super warm and, excited about as excited about my pregnancy as I was. But I was like, well, whatever. She does this, all day long. This isn't exciting to her. But so So she left and said she was going to go get the doctor and left us in there with the student to like practice taking pictures. And of course, I had no idea what I was looking at on the screen, that there were soft markers. And the student, the poor thing, I mean, I think she must have known that something was up, but obviously wasn't going to say anything. And it was a long time before the doctor came back. And finally, the doctor came back into the room, and the student went and stood in the corner of the room. And the doctor asked if she could talk in front of my mom. And at that point, my heart fell out of my chest, you know, like I knew something was wrong. And I said, yeah, that would be fine. I didn't know what else I was going to say. Like, no, Mom, will you please leave? So she, you know, explained that she found some soft markers for potentially a chromosomal abnormality. So his the fluid behind his neck, the nuchal translucency was higher, and there was a lack of a nasal bone. And I think there was something else, but I honestly can't remember. And, you know, she said that basically when I got pregnant, I had like a 1 in 500 chance or whatever would have been normal for my age range to have a baby with Down syndrome. And her findings at that screening brought my chances to 1 in 29, and that I should go see a genetic counselor. And I don't do like terribly well in situations like this. I get very awkward, and then I always like make dark jokes, which my husband gets and appreciates, but of course he wasn't there. And I said, is this because I fell asleep with the electric blanket on early on in my pregnancy?
Oh my gosh.
And she looked at me like, no, this is a random chance thing. And I was like, okay, like I was kidding, but okay. So she told me she, you know, made an appointment for me to see a genetic counselor. And it happened to be on the same day as my like first real midwife appointment. And I was like, oh, I can't do that day. I have a midwife appointment. And she was like, this is more important. You need to do this first. And I was like, oh, okay. So we left, and my mom and I went to go to McDonald's to get breakfast, and we pulled into the parking lot, and I said, why don't you go in? Like, I need to call Matt. And so she went in, and that's kind of when, you know, the emotions hit me, and I started crying, and I called him, and he didn't answer, and I texted him, and I said, you need to like stop what you're doing and call me. And he called me right back, and I told him, you know, everything I had just found out. And this is such a weird part for me to describe, because I wasn't like devastated. I wasn't like super sad, but I was really, really crying. But I said, you know, I feel like I have this higher sense of purpose now that I didn't have before, which is kind of a weird thing for me to say. I'm not particularly religious or even that spiritual. So it was an odd like feeling for me, but I just felt like whatever was happening was what was supposed to happen. And this is where we were supposed to be.
What was his response?
You know, we had actually, oddly enough, before we got married, we had talked about the possibility of adopting a child with special needs. Mm-hmm. I had like come across a random Instagram page called The Lucky Few, where this mom adopted 3 children. 2 of them have Down syndrome and 1 doesn't. But I had like come across it randomly in a search like years ago. And I remember thinking like, they just look like they're having so much fun. Like they just seem to have something figured out. And so this was something my husband and I had like talked about, maybe even doing. And then of course I decided that I wasn't cut out for it. And so we decided to just have a baby first and then maybe bring that up again. So actually it made that conversation a lot easier than I think it could have been, because I wasn't really scared of his reaction. Yeah. And he was really emotional. I mean, he was And we were both scared, of course, about the unknown, but it wasn't, it just wasn't this like devastation, I think, that maybe I would have expected. And actually, I would like to say too, now that I'm 2 years into this and I've met a lot of moms with a lot of, different kids with different needs, and a lot of them have Down syndrome. And, sometimes moms do start off devastated and mourning, the baby they thought they were going to have. And so I just don't want anyone listening to my story to think that because I didn't feel that devastation means that I was somehow like better cut out for this, because that is 100% not the case. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But he was really supportive, and of course we were both just scared. So he came home and we went and saw the genetic counselor, and she broke down all of our options for confirming the diagnosis. And we decided to do a cell-free DNA test as opposed to, a CVS or an amnio. Cell-free DNA tests have changed a lot in the last, 5 years, and they're very accurate now. So she told us that just having the cell-free DNA, which was a blood test, would give us like a 98% correct. Sorry, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I can't think of it either, because one's like a diagnostic and one is
technically a screening. Right?
Yeah.
But it is like 98% correct.
Okay.
Which is a lot different than it was like 5 years ago. But for us, it didn't make sense to go through a diagnostic for like another 2%,
right.
Like guarantee. So we just decided to do the cell-free DNA. And so we went right from the genetic counselor over to the lab and had that drawn. And they told us it would take about a week. And that was on a Tuesday. And so we went home, and then I was like, what do I do now? Like, how am I supposed to just like live my life until I, know for sure what's going on? So we decided to go away for the weekend while we waited for the results. And we went to St. Michael's, Maryland, which is one of our favorite sort of getaway spots. And we were planning on just staying one night, but then the next morning at breakfast, I burst into tears and I said, can we please stay another night? If our baby has Down syndrome, we won't be able to afford weekend getaways anymore, which of course, again, now I realize is absurd. But that's just where my head was, I was like, I just want to enjoy this time together while we can, because everything's about to be really hard.
Yeah.
So we stayed another night, and then we came back Monday, which was President's Day. And within an hour of getting home, we got the call that our baby had Down syndrome, and he was a boy. And we were so excited. We both felt very sure that we were having a boy. So we were very excited about that. And then it was just like this giant like sigh of relief. We were a little worried about the potential of having a different chromosomal abnormality that wouldn't maybe be compatible with life, and sort of what that decision process would look like for us. So when we found out that he had Down syndrome, that was actually a great relief. And we just kind of moved on from there. We were excited to be parents. And I Googled Down syndrome Baltimore, and I found the Chesapeake Down syndrome parent group. And I called they had like a hotline that you could call at any time you got a diagnosis. And so I called that number, and I immediately spoke with a mom who had a kid with Down syndrome. And she said, it's going to be really easy for you to like kind of look into this and realize all of the like scary health things that can be associated with this. But just know that like no baby has all of those health problems at the same time. And, my son is now 5, and he didn't have any health problems. So that was really a relief for me. I had like come across that, half of kids with Down syndrome have congenital heart disease, or, problems with their digestive tract, or might need surgery before they're born, or, like crazy things. So it was really easy to kind of go down that wormhole. And it was great to connect with people to kind of bring me back to, reality. And we told our immediate family, and then we asked them to kind of spread the news to other people. We weren't really ready to kind of bear other people's emotional response to it while we were still processing our own. And we just asked that they communicate that we were, really excited to be parents, and we know he's going to, be great in our family. And we chose World Down Syndrome Day, which is March 21st, to kind of share publicly on, Facebook that he would have Down syndrome. And then I learned pretty quickly to control people's response to the diagnosis by making sure that we were very upbeat and positive when we were giving the news. I learned that after I got a couple I'm sorries, which was rough. I was thinking like, I'm not sorry. Why are you sorry? What do I even say to that? But of course, people don't know how to respond unless, you give some sort of indication on how you're feeling. So I used that approach with friends and acquaintances, and then even, midwives and doctors, just so that everybody knew how to, treat me and respond to me. And yeah, the rest of my pregnancy was really pretty easy. I didn't have any major pregnancy symptoms. I never got nauseous or sick or anything like that. I randomly got like acid reflux and carpal tunnel, which I didn't even realize was a pregnancy symptom. But the rest of the pregnancy went really great. I took a nap every day. I was working as a nanny, and my charge wouldn't still nap every day. So I napped when she did. And I found working out to be really meditative. I would get on the elliptical at the gym, and I would be breathing really heavily, and I would just imagine, oxygenated blood being carried to my baby. And I felt like that was a really good way to connect to him. I don't work out anymore. I should get pregnant again so I get back in the habit, because I was really good about it when I was pregnant. And then, of course, you have a baby and it's not as easy. And then, we had a 20-week anatomy scan, and that looked good, which was a huge relief. We had an echocardiogram to check his heart, which also came back normal. And so I naively thought that meant his heart was fine, not realizing that other things could come up later. But, it did give me some peace during my pregnancy. So I think that was helpful. And my birth plan had kind of changed a little bit from before I got pregnant to when I, was pregnant and kind of going through all of this. I started my birth nerd journey 10 years ago, long before I was married or serious about anyone or really thinking about kids. But my aunt, whom I'm really close with, she's only 6 years older than me. She was an apprentice midwife, and she had a couple of her babies at home. And so that's when I really dove into the whole, business of being born thing. I did a doula training. I was super into it. And then, so I just assumed that I would seek out, an unmedicated, labor and delivery. And then as my pregnancy went on, I got really anxious about, kind of what could happen to either me or baby while I was laboring, or, potentially a NICU stay. And I listened a lot to your podcast. I started listening to your podcast before I was even pregnant. And a lot of women talk about labor land and sort of, just kind of turning into themselves and not really being aware of what's going on around them. And that is not what I wanted. I wanted to be very cognitively present, in case any big decisions needed to be made. So I talked a lot with my midwives and my husband, and I felt a lot of weird guilt for pursuing an epidural. I thought maybe I was trying to take an easy way out or something, but now in hindsight, I know that was, the right decision for me. And so that's what I decided. And at my 34-week appointment. I met with a midwife who we call like the Queen Diva because she's in her like 70s. She doesn't attend births. Actually, I think she's officially retired now, but she wasn't attending births. She was only like seeing patients like in the clinic, but she had been doing it for a long time. And she like really poked around in me to see where baby was. And she said, well, either he's coming early or you're having a big baby. And I thought, well, I'm having a big baby because my husband was 10 pounds, 5 ounces, and I was 8'11", and this is just my destiny. And never in a million years did I think my baby was going to come early. I thought he was going to come late. And also starting at 34 weeks, I started having weekly biophysicals and non-stress tests, which just so that they could keep an eye on things and make sure that he was still healthy and growing. And I really enjoyed those. I love getting to see him a little extra. And then I usually napped during the non-stress test. So that was great. And in June, a friend of mine who I had met through our Down syndrome parent group had her baby girl with Down syndrome. And she ended up needing a NICU stay. And they didn't know of anything prenatally. And so that kind of reintroduced the anxiety for me. It just kind of made it clear that, you aren't going to be able to predict what sort of state he's going to be in when he's born. And that kind of scared me. I was really worried about him just kind of being whisked away from me, or something being wrong and just having to make like really big decisions right away. So that contributed to a little bit of anxiety, but otherwise, yeah, the rest of my pregnancy went great. And I think that kind of wraps up my pregnancy portion.
All right. So then how did labor start for you?
So I was due August 21st, and on August 13th, I lost my mucus plug and had some bloody show. And I called my doula, and she said, well, that could still mean some time. And I was like, okay, good. Cause like, I did not expect this baby to come early. And so, on the 14th, I went to work. I felt completely normal. I came home. My grandma called and asked if I was starting to nest. She told me that, before all of her babies were born, she got all her ironing done and all her cleaning done. And I said, well, I have no desire to iron, so I don't think I'm having this baby anytime soon. But a few hours later, I went to bed and I woke up at 1:30 a.m. and I was having a contraction. And I knew I was having a contraction. I was like, oh, that's a contraction. And I was like, well, this is early labor, go back to sleep, make sure you're rested. So I went back to sleep and then woke up 20 minutes later to another one. And then just kind of did that, woke up every 20 minutes, had a contraction, didn't have to really do much through them, but just woke up to it. And then it was 15 minutes and then 10 minutes. And then I think around 5 a.m., I couldn't stay in bed through them anymore. I was really uncomfortable in bed. So I got up and I kind of walked around for a little bit. And then I went to the bathroom. And when I went to use the bathroom, my water broke. And it was the same thing. I never hear a lot of women who are like, I don't know, did I pee? Did I, but I was like, oh, that's my water. Like my water just broke. So I called my midwife and I noticed that the fluid was clear. And she said, as long as it's clear, you can stay home up to 24 hours. So just come in when you feel like you need to, or in 24 hours, whatever, comes first. So I called my boss and I told her I wouldn't be coming in. And I was a little frustrated because I had 2 more days of work left and I was hoping to have a little break before I had the baby. But it was fine. So around 6:30, I think my husband woke up. He was sleeping downstairs at this point in my pregnancy because I was taking up the whole bed with my pregnancy pillow. And also it was very hot. So he went downstairs. So when he came up, I filled him in on what was going on. I said, my water broke and I'm having, pretty regular contractions. I think this is going to happen soon. So he said, okay, what have you been doing? And I told him that, walking through the contractions is what's been helping me. And he said, well, why don't we walk up to the grocery store and we can get some, snacks for later. And I'd like to grab a couple of things before, we go to the hospital. And I said, okay. So we walked up to the grocery store, and it really sort of picked up at that point. Like they were coming closer together, and I was having to kind of work through them a little more. So I probably made a lot of people in the grocery store very nervous as I was pushing around the shopping cart. But we got some apples and pistachios and apple fritters, and then we walked home. And at this point, I think the contractions were about 5 minutes apart, and I was needing to sort of vocalize more through them. And I decided to get in the shower, and my husband fed me apple slices while I labored in the shower, which is like the loveliest part of my labor. It's like my fondest
nice.
memory. It was really nice. Like something about the coolness of the apples, juxtaposed to the hot shower, just like was really doing it for me. So, and at that point I was getting a little like, okay, I'm not really sure what to like do anymore. So we called my doula. I think I forgot to mention that I hired a doula, but she was not available, but her backup was. So, her backup came while I was still in the shower. And then around this time, something changed, and I became like, I wasn't able to cope, and I couldn't get comfortable. And I was like, I need to get out of the shower. Like all of a sudden the shower became like horrible. Like I was like, this is hot. It's like steamy. Like this is just terrible. And my husband's like, well, like 2 minutes ago it was fine. And I was like, well, now it's not. So I got out of the shower, and my doula tried to help me. We had like a birthing ball and a rebozo, and she tried to help with other positions, but just nothing was helping. And I remember saying to my husband, I'm not getting any breaks. There's supposed to be breaks. And I just wasn't feeling any sort of relief between the contractions. And I was getting a little panicky, that I wasn't able to like, exhale fully or like really fully relax between. And I just could feel myself really tensing. And I said, I just want to go to the hospital. I was a little nervous about going too soon, but I didn't know what else to do. So we packed up and we went to the hospital, and Matt dropped me and my doula off at the front door so that she could walk in with me while he parked the car. And so she went in with me to triage. And when I got there, my midwife checked me, and I was 5 centimeters dilated and 100% effaced, and baby was at 0 station. And one of the rooms had a tub in it, and she knew that I had, wanted access to the tub. But when I got there, she said, let's try to hold off on the tub for a little while longer. And in my mind, I thought like the tub's not available, and she's just trying to get me, to be okay with that. But I was also like, I have zero desire to get in a tub right now. I just got out of the shower, and that was terrible. Like I do not want to be hot again. I said, I just want to get to my room, and I would like my epidural. And she said, okay. So I got all checked in and went to the room, and the anesthesiologist came in, and I leaned over, a pillow. And I had a lot of anxiety surrounding the epidural. I was really worried it was going to hurt. And I have to say I was in so much pain that I didn't feel the epidural go in. I have no memory of what that even felt like. I was just so focused on not moving and trying to work through contractions in this really uncomfortable, hunched over position. My window in my room looked over the hospital's, the daycare's playground. And so there were kids out playing. So I was just trying to focus on the kids and just imagining my own, my own boy. And I was able to kind of hold it together and hold still. And then as soon as it hit, it was almost like I woke up. I just felt so clear and so relaxed, and was like, okay, hi, yes. What do we need to do? And of course, at that point, there was nothing to do other than just labor. So I was able to relax, and I slept for a little bit and just kind of labored on for a while. At some point, my epidural wore off on one side only. And they just kept I would sort of complain about it. And they just kept upping the dose of it, which just made the side it was working on more numb, and then did nothing to the side that it didn't work on. And it was almost like the anesthesiologist didn't believe me. And was like, well, you're going to feel something. And I was like, I understand. I'm not trying to feel nothing, but I can feel everything on one side and, very little on the other, but it wasn't enough to move them to do anything differently. So it came in handy later because I was able to labor and then eventually push in different positions because I had pretty good use of my left leg. At some point, it was discovered that I had a cervical lip and that baby was posterior, which I think is why I was not feeling the breaks that I thought I should be getting earlier on. And by 10 p.m. or so, I was fully dilated and I was already fully effaced, but baby had not descended at all. But like I said, they found out he was posterior, so we assumed that was probably why. So the midwife asked if she could give me some Pitocin to see if that would help him turn. And I agreed to that. It was something I will say that I really loved about this practice is that it was really consent-based. They did nothing without asking me first. And nothing felt super rushed at this point either, which was really nice. I was able to kind of take my time and think about things and talk about things. But I did not want to push him out posterior. So I was motivated to see if we could get him to turn. So they gave me Pitocin, and I think my doula helped kind of position the peanut pillow. And we did that for about 45 minutes and he did turn. I don't think he was complete, but he did turn. And so that was really reassuring. And the cervical lip went away. I don't know where it went, if it happened with the help of a midwife or just, my body. But, so I felt okay, we can do this. He's in a good position. The cervical lip is gone. I'm going to be able to, push him out, but he just wasn't descending. And so the midwives asked if I would mind, pushing to see if that would help move him down. And I pushed for hours in multiple positions. My doula even got me on hands and knees. I tried on my back for a little while and it just wasn't moving him down. I mean, he never moved past 0 station. So finally they had an OB come in at some point while I was pushing just to kind of help and see what was going on. And at this point they said, you've been fully dilated for a while. And, like I said, I think I was fully dilated at 10 p.m. and around 5 a.m., they came in and said, you've been fully dilated. Your water's been broken. We don't really want you hanging out like this, that much longer. And so here are some options. We can do a vacuum assisted delivery, or we can just, do a C-section. And I asked everyone but my husband to leave so that we could talk it over. And I was so frustrated. I felt like I knew that we were heading towards C-section and I was so tired. I was exhausted, but I didn't want to not try the vacuum because I knew I would then just wonder if that would have been the thing that worked. And so we agreed to try a vacuum assisted delivery, and they wanted to do that in the OR so that they could go right to surgery if needed. And so they scrubbed me up and, got me all prepped and, wheeled me into the OR, and the doctor put the vacuum inside me, and I was so scared. I was just so terrified, and I could feel, a lot still. And I could feel where the baby was when he was tugging with the vacuum and I was pushing along. I could feel where the baby was. And remember thinking, if he comes out right now, it's going to break me in half. Like, this is not how this is supposed to feel. He felt so high up in me. And I was terrified, honestly, that he was actually going to come out and that it was going to like do serious damage to me. So I don't remember how long we tried that. I know it was only a few contractions because they didn't want to, upset baby too much. And so he said, we'll try one more, and it didn't work. And when it was over, I just burst into tears and I immediately sang, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I just felt like I had failed everybody who had been working so hard with me for, a whole day at this point. And everybody was rooting for me and just wanted it so badly for me. And it just didn't happen. And I felt like, part of it was my fault for some reason. Like, it just was something that I wasn't, like, maybe I wasn't trying hard enough because I was scared or something that kept it from working. But the midwife was really adamant about, saying, don't you apologize. Like, this, you worked so hard and, you did everything right. So, at that point it was time to just start surgery. So, the other thing I like about this practice, and this might be standard, I'm not sure, but in the event of an unplanned C-section, the midwife becomes the surgeon's assistant. So she stays in the whole time, which was great. And so the anesthesiologist came in and gave me a spinal block, which I was like, that's not going to work. I can feel everything. And he was like, well, you won't feel anything, and gives me the spinal block. And then they put the sheet up, and I'm like, honestly terrified that they're going to start cutting into me and I'm going to feel it. And he does the like prick test, and I can't see because the sheet's up, but I just say like, ow, ow, I can feel that. And he was like, oh, I guess it didn't work. And I was like, I know, I've been telling you this for like 18 hours. So that meant I had to go under general, which was the worst blow of this whole experience. And the anesthesiologist told my husband to give me a kiss, and say goodbye. And my husband didn't realize that he wasn't going to be able to come back in. He thought he just had to leave while they were putting me under. But while I was under, he wasn't allowed to come back in. And so he ended up actually like running around and finding a window and being able to watch. But he left, and the anesthesiologist said, okay, we're going to, I'm going to put you under. And my last thought was, I might not wake up. I might not meet my baby. And it was a terrible, terrible last thought. But I was so exhausted, and I just was like, I can't fight this anymore. Like, I can't, there's nothing else I can do. And then I came to with like an absolute jolt, and I was in the OR still, and I looked over and I saw the surgeon who was wiping his hands, and he looked at me and he said, plan on future C-sections. That was the first thing he said to me. And I said, okay, where's my baby? And so they started wheeling me to recovery, and someone I didn't recognize, I think she might have been like the baby nurse or something, said over me to the other nurse who was wheeling me out, does she know about the Down syndrome? And I look at her and I said, yes, where is my baby? And I just thought, like, why are you talking over me right now? Like, I am right here. And what if I didn't?
Yeah.
Like, what a way to learn. I'm not really sure what. I guess it was just a long day for everyone. But so unfortunately, the rest is just kind of foggy. Like, I think whatever adrenaline like shot me awake in the OR just quickly drained because I had been up and laboring for 29 hours. But because I don't remember laying my eyes on him the first time, and the next thing I remember is just kind of being in the recovery room, and I'm holding him, and my doulas are there and my husband's there, and my doula is helping me nurse him, and he latched on really well, which was great. But I don't have that like moment, that everybody talks about and like as the greatest moment of their life. I just don't have it. I don't remember meeting him. And I've actually found a lot of peace in following along with people's adoption stories because they describe something similar. Like what's missing and not knowing how your baby was treated when they were born. And so I have found some peace in that, like not every mom knows what that moment is like, and that doesn't make you less of a mom, and it doesn't make your baby less your baby. And it certainly doesn't affect your ability to bond with your baby later on. That was something I was really, really afraid of, because it did take a while, but it came. It does come. I think it's really important to say that because so many people, I imagine, are just so scared that it won't, but it does. I think my experience is probably pretty similar to that of like a typical dad's, it just came later, but it does come, and it's, I have to imagine just as sweet when it does.
Yeah.
So yeah, Robert Ignatius was born August 16th at 6:22 a.m., 29 hours after my first contraction. And he was 8 pounds, 12 ounces, and I think 21 inches long, although I honestly can't remember for sure.
I can never remember that either.
I'm really impressed with people who just can recite that information.
So then what did recovery look like for you?
My physical recovery was super easy. I attribute that to, I think, how fit I was during my pregnancy. And there were multiple times throughout my physical recovery where I thought to myself, and I'm sure I said to anyone who would listen, I cannot imagine this going any better if he would have come out during that vacuum assist. If he would have come out during that vacuum assist, I really think I would have had broken bones or something. That's what it felt like anyway. So 2 weeks I was pain-free and basically doing what I would normally do. I was up and walking the same day. They encouraged that at the hospital. And so that part of it was great. I was super thankful for that because there was a lot that was required of me physically. And so, yeah, I had really terrible baby blues. I think for 10 days, I was just crying nonstop. And it would come on very randomly. It wasn't about sadness. And then I started doubting myself, and I was like, is this some sort of did I just not face the Down syndrome diagnosis or something? And that's why I'm crying all the time now. But then it just went away. So, like I said, after 10 days or so, but it was really hard. There's still a song that I listen to a lot on my playlist that I cannot listen to this day because I would get it stuck in my head while I was crying. And nursing went well for a month. Like I said, he latched on pretty well. I did use a nipple shield, which helped. And, at his 2-week, checkup, he was 9.5 pounds or something. So he was gaining weight really well. And I thought I had a great handle on it. And then when he was around a month old, I noticed that he was taking a really long time to nurse. I just couldn't really describe it. It just seemed not very efficient anymore. Something was changing and I just wasn't sure what. So I had an IBCLC come, and she looked at him and she said, does he have any heart issues? And I said, well, they did an echocardiogram after he was born. They did find a couple of things, but they said that might close on its own. We're following up with the cardiologist like next week or something. And she was like, okay. And like everything from her end looked good. So, she helped me set up my pump, and I said, maybe I'll try pumping and just see. And so I pumped and then gave him milk out of a bottle, and he seemed to do a lot better. And I was like, well, I'll just do that. Like that'll be easy, right? Not actually realizing how terrible exclusively pumping is. But so I did that. And then when we took him to the cardiologist, my total world was shocked again, because we went through this whole other echocardiogram. It was like a 2-hour appointment, and we go through the echocardiogram and everything, and we're waiting to actually see the doctor after he looks at the results. And instead, a dietitian comes in and asks me how feeding's going. And I said, well, nursing was really hard. He was really good at it. And then I don't know what happened. He just wasn't good at it. So I've just been pumping and feeding him, through the bottle. And she's like, yeah, that can happen a lot of times with our cardiac babies. And I was like, cardiac babies? I don't have one of those. Like, they said these holes were going to close up on their own, and that a lot of babies have them when they're born and they just close up. And I was very confused. And then the cardiologist comes in and explains that he has 3 holes in his heart. And he does expect that one of them will close, but the other 2, we're just going to have to watch. They were described as moderate in size. And I was just completely blindsided. I just didn't think that's where we were heading. And so they told me that that's what the feeding issue was. And then sure enough, like a couple of weeks go by. I mean, we were going to the cardiologist every 2 weeks at this point and going through this whole 2.5-hour appointment every time to check his heart and keep close eye on things. And then every time we'd go, his feeding would just tank and tank and tank, even his, through the bottle. And it got to the point when he was 2 months old where we had to get him a G-tube so that we could nourish him, because I was tracking his feeds, and I would feed him the bottle, and it got to the point where he was just taking like 5 milliliters or something like absurd, like probably not even ingesting that. Like you could easily leak 5 milliliters of milk out of a bottle without much notice. But I was tracking it really closely, and he just wasn't getting nearly what he needed, and his weight kept falling and falling. So at 2 months old, we went to the hospital, and we were admitted for 11 days for failure to thrive. And we left with a G-tube, and I was really fixated on continuing to give him a bottle so that he wouldn't forget how to eat. And I really leaned on our Down syndrome parent group at that point too, because a lot of the moms had kids who had feeding tubes, and they gave me a lot of advice and said, it's really important to continue to offer the bottle, even if he won't take it, so that he doesn't forget that, movement in the mouth. And so we did that, and we kept an eye on his heart, but the one hole did close and the other 2 did not. So at 4 months old, he had open heart surgery. And that was another one of those just crazy emotional days where I didn't know how to process it. So I was making terrible jokes all day long, but thankfully my husband was there for that one, and he appreciates my dark humor. So that was a wild, wild day. But the surgery was successful, and they patched up his little heart. And I think it was about 5 weeks after that that something clicked, and he was strong enough, and he started drinking from a bottle again. So that was really exciting, because I wasn't sure how hard we were going to have to work at that. And then when he was 6 months old, we took him back to St. Michael's, where we went and waited for the results from his genetic testing. And it just was such a victory lap for us. You know, it was just the most joyful experience to bring him back to that place where I felt like I was in such a dark place, and now bringing so much light to it. And also it was just funny because I really thought my world was just going to be totally rocked by having a child with Down syndrome, and I wasn't going to get to like do anything that I like doing, which is just so silly. I can't imagine my life being any other way. And I do the things that I love, and I love the things that I do even more now. And I just can't imagine not having him in my life. And it's just been such a gift. And I'm so grateful that he is ours.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful to you for sharing your story with us. So he's 2 now, right?
He is. Yeah, he is thriving 2-year-old.
He's so cute. You shared that picture in the Patreon group. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes, he is, you know, a light. Honestly, I think that's the only way to describe it. He's just a total light in our lives, and he loves things that 2-year-olds love, you know, and it's just so funny. He's such like a cliche. He plays with trucks and blocks and, you know, it's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And you mentioned a couple resources like Facebook groups and stuff like that, specifically for parents that are expecting a child with Down syndrome. Do you have any places that you really love that you'd want to send people to as far as resources?
Absolutely. So one thing that I found really helpful was a book that's called Babies with Down Syndrome. Mm-hmm. And it just gives sort of like, it's like a comprehensive guide, you know, of all the things you can expect, but it's not like a dark and scary place, if that makes sense. It does talk a lot about, you know, some dark and scary things, but it's just very sort of matter of fact. And they, you know, articulate that, you know, not all kids have all of these, but just to know what could happen. And then like random things, like when he started teething and stuff, I noticed he was getting teeth in like a different order. So I just went in the index of that book and I looked up teething, and it was like, oh yeah, sure enough, they just get their teeth in a weird order sometimes. And it's, you know, normal. So it provided a lot of relief, which was great. And then, yeah, I kind of skipped the national websites myself and just went straight to our local Down syndrome parent group. I just really liked that more personal advice and help. But I know the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network and the National Down Syndrome Congress have a lot of great resources for parents who are facing a diagnosis. So I'll send you the links to those. And then there's a Facebook group for everything. Yeah. Like I like live and die by Facebook groups. I'm on a GTube site. I'm on a, you know, congenital heart disease, and he has this weird allergy called FPIES. So I'm on an FPIES group. So like any little thing that ever comes up in your pregnancy or a diagnosis or anything, honestly, there's a group for it. And I highly recommend that you find it and join it and just listen and ask if you feel, you know, comfortable doing so.
It's definitely one of the gifts of the internet, I would say.
Yes, right. Yeah, I know. It certainly comes with some terrible things too. But the same thing goes for Instagram accounts. So that was the first thing that I did, was find a bunch of Instagram accounts that, you know, were celebrating family members with Down syndrome. And I still, you know, those are some of my favorite pages still. And even though I'm living it myself. So yeah, whatever you're going through, find the group for it. That's what I would recommend.
Awesome. And then did you want to share where people can connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. I am on Instagram. I have a public page called Robert Ignites.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much again, Megan, for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much again to Megan for sharing her story with us. If you want more information from her episode, you can head over to thebirthhour.com and search for her name in the search bar, and that'll come up for you. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Kindred Bravely's newest line of lounge and sleepwear. I'm obsessed, you guys. It's so fun to have stuff that I can wear even though I'm not pregnant or nursing now, but they're all super nursing friendly and most of them are pregnancy friendly as well. So if you have anything from Kindred Bravely, you know how soft their clothes are, and these new things are no different. So if you go to kindredbravely.com and you go to shop and then the lounge section, some of the things that I'm loving are the Clea pajamas. They have both a set of long sleeve and long pants in several different colors with like a white piping, and they're insanely soft, but they have like a nice weight to them, and everything has pockets. Even things that when I opened them, I was like, oh, this isn't going to have pockets. It does because Kindred Bravely gets it that we all want pockets. So I have their Clea bamboo long sleeve classic sleep shirt, and then I also have the Clea long sleeve classic pajama set, which is a top and bottom versus the dress. They're both amazingly comfortable. The other thing I'm loving are the bamboo maternity and postpartum lounge pants. So you guys already know how much I love their high-waisted leggings. They're so comfy, but also really supportive and like a good thick fabric. These bamboo postpartum and maternity lounge pants are a little bit of a more flowy, lighter weight, but still high-waisted, and they fit me amazingly well. And I could tell that they would fit, during pregnancy or newly postpartum as your body shifts and changes because they are so stretchy and soft. And they also have pockets, which I did not think they were going to because, again, they're basically just like really comfy lounge pants. But the other cool thing about them is I have them in black, which I believe is the only color they come in right now. And they look like they could be dress pants. Like I wore them. I actually cut my finger recently, and so I was having to pull my pants up and down, and the leggings were like a little too tight for that. And so I wanted something that was easier up and down. And so I put on these lounge pants and I wore them out and about. And of course, we're not going like very many places these days, but around my neighborhood and stuff. And they look like, a put together outfit. So highly recommend those for kind of a transition from home to out and about. And then the Clea pajama set comes in a few different colors. I have the black, but they also have it in a really pretty like blush pink color. And then the navy blue, I believe, is in the dress one. And it's really nice. That's what I have for the dress. Okay, and the other gown that I really like is the Betsy ribbed bamboo nursing and maternity nightgown. This nightgown is really, really soft, but it has a ribbed texture to it, which I think is a nice kind of just different way to mix it up. And then it has snaps in the front, kind of like a Henley top that's so, so cute. I have it in the sand color. It's kind of like a taupe or, I don't know. You'll have to look at the website. But it also comes in black and like a plum burgundy that I'm obsessed with, and I might have to get that next. And that one does have a shelf bra in it. So if you're looking for a little bit more support in a nightgown, that's a nice option for sure, and a nice way to have, your breast pads stay in place when you're nursing and you don't want to leak all over yourself, which is something I always personally deal with. And then they still have their Jane maternity and nursing pajamas, which are like my favorite for winter. And they do have a flap for them for nursing, which I don't need anymore, but I don't care. I'm still going to wear them. I have those in 2 different colors, and they are like a legging pajama set, but really, really stretchy, thin fabric that's not constrictive at all for sleeping, which I really like. And then you guys know that I'm obsessed with their Simply Sublime nursing tank. If you need a nursing tank, you need to try this one. It doesn't have a shelf bra. It's just supportive and contoured enough to support you without a shelf bra. And as somebody who wears a pretty big cup size, I can say that it's extremely supportive. It doesn't give you uniboob, and I just love it. I still wear them occasionally, and I actually just got one from their sister brand that doesn't have the nursing clasps so that I could use that without feeling like I'm still wearing nursing clothes, even though I'm not nursing anymore. But I would happily have continued to wear it because I love it so much. And if you're curious, their sister brand is called Davy Piper, and you can just click over to that from their main website, and it's basically a lot of their same clothes, but without the specific things tailored for maternity and postpartum. Okay, the last thing I wanted to share about is their Sublime adjustable crossover nursing and lounge bra. Kind of a mouthful, but basically they took their lounge sleep bra and combined it with their Simply Sublime bra, which I'm a huge fan of the Simply Sublime bra because of the adjustable straps and the material of it being so supportive. And so this gives you that same, feature of the crossover that's so good for nursing and for sleep, but with just like a little bit more support, and the adjustability of the straps is huge. So they sent me one to try, even though, I don't really need that anymore, but I'm so glad they did because now I can tell you guys about it. And I probably would have alternated between the Simply Sublime tank and this bra to sleep in when I was nursing, because I really do like the sleep bra aspect of the crossover in the front. But the other sleep bras from them, although they were extremely comfortable, weren't always the most supportive for just being around the house and everything. They're fine for sleeping, but around the house, I really like their Simply Sublime for a larger chested person. I know that that would vary based on your chest size, but the other great thing about this is it's a new product, but it's already coming in the busty sizing, which you've heard me talk about the busty sizing before, but this is what really makes Kindred Bravely stand out for me, because so many things, you have to size up so high if you're larger chested, but then it's too big in other places. So for me with Kindred Bravely, I wear like a 34H, and I can always wear their large busty as far as tanks and bras. So that's what I went with, and I'm loving it. So glad they added this to their options. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to be sharing a lot of these new things in my Instagram stories today. So head over to the Birth Hour Instagram, and you can see me do a little try on and talk all about everything. And of course, you can always, leave a comment on the show notes page or send me a message, and I'll try to help you. Plus, the Kindred Bravely support is amazingly helpful, and they'll answer all your questions. I also love that on their website, they'll tell you what size the model is wearing. So I'm looking at this Sublime adjustable crossover nursing and lounge bra, and it says that this model, her name is Joy, and she's wearing a 36E, or she's wearing a large, and she's a 36E chest size. And so I think that's so helpful to kind of, make a good guess as to what size you should get. So go over to kindredbravely.com, use the coupon code BIRTHHOUR for 20% off, and try out some of these new things. Ask for some of these amazingly comfortable pajamas for the holidays. It's so nice to be comfortable when you're home with a new baby, and especially during the colder months when you just want to be so cozy. All right, thanks again for listening, you guys, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.